Welcome back to some more Android development programming. What we're going to talk about today is a focus primarily on array adapters. Where we're at kind of in the course, last time we introduced adapters and adapter views. We were using the base adapter for that example. We're going to continue learning about adapters and adapter views by talking about the array adapter. So it's going to be the same adapter view. We're going to focus on the list view again. Towards the end of the app, we're going to show you a grid view and a gallery, but we're going to focus on list view. The big difference is we're going to be using a new adapter. The adapter that we're going to be using is called ArrayAdapter. This is a native adapter, which means it's built in. Google wrote it for you. We're going to show you how to use the default ArrayAdapter and then also some things you can do by subclassing it. You can read Google's description of an array adapter. Probably if you read through it now, it won't mean nearly as much to you as it will after today's example. I do suggest you go ahead and read through their description. The summary I added at the bottom. The summary is an array adapter. It uses the toString values of an array and it creates text views using the toString result of the objects. This is an important point. It has to be an array of objects, so it can't be like an array of ints or anything like that. It has to have a toString method that it can call to fill in the text view. I always like the graphical description the best, so the adapter here is an array adapter. And the way I would think about it is it's more specialized, but there's more code kind of already written for you. And it automatically just takes that toString and it puts text views in. And so a list view with an array adapter might look like this. They can look like all kinds of things, but this is what it might look like. Cool, so let's go ahead and get, before we get started, let's talk about the big picture of how does this array adapter versus base adapter fit into the big picture of adapter classes. If you go on to Google's help, it'll talk about these various adapters. I kind of like the graphical view of them, so I'll kind of show that here. The way you can think about it is there are a lot of interfaces. There's an adapter interface, and then a list adapter and a spinner adapter interface. There's also one called filterable. Of these, base adapter implements these interfaces, but it is an abstract class, and we used it last time. Then the concrete class that Google gives you is the array adapter. There's also another one that you would use quite often, especially if you're using SQLite, and that's called the simple cursor adapter. In this course, it looks like we're going to run out of time before we get there. But that's kind of too bad because that's a really important adapter to learn about. Fortunately, Google has a great tutorial. It's called the Notepad tutorial, so make sure you work through the Notepad tutorial. So the app we're going to make is called the Listview Arrayadapter. The idea of the app is that we're going to have a list view they're going to be our old row views. And when you click on them, it's going to add stars. So like if I click on the Bob row, it would give him, 1 star, click a second time, 2 stars, and then if I clicked him a third time, he'd get a 3rd star. That's going to be the focus. So let's go ahead and create a new project in Eclipse. Call it Listview Arrayadapter. As per usual, I'm going to have to call mine video, Listview Arrayadapter video. Use whatever target you like. I'm going to use 1.5, and I'll just call it Listview AA just because the name was getting pretty long already. I'll use the reverse DNS of the school for the package name. And you can see that you get all the typical stuff with your first class, and then also a main.xml. Cool, so let's go ahead and get started with the XML. What we'd like to add to the XML is we'd like to add an edit text and then also a list view. These are going to be in the linear layout. Each is going to need its own ID. And then also I went ahead and added a 10 dp border padding on the linear layout. So go ahead and take a minute and see if you can do that on your own, and then we'll get back together. So I'll go ahead and work mine. So I want an edit text, and then I'm also going to want a list view. And then whenever I work in Eclipse, I like to bring up the outline and properties, which are already up. If they weren't, I could have got to them via show view, outlines right there, and then other, the properties. I want to get rid of this text view, don't need that. Linear layout, I'm going to add a 10 dp padding. My edit text, I'm going to make fill the width. Same as my list view, I'm going to make it fill the width as well. I'm just going to give my edit text the ID. I'm just going to call it edit_text. Oops. And the list view, also in the edit text, I'm going to take off that default text. Just delete it. And the list view, I'm just going to call list view. Oops, it popped up that thing again. So list view. And so I should be all set. If you have trouble making your XML file, it's shown in the slides. You can see exactly what I did here. Then what we're going to do next is a task you should be very familiar with, and that's capturing those views from the XML. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to not make member variables, because all of this is going to happen in the onCreate method. So I will go ahead and make it final, though. That way if I want to reference it in an anonymous inner class, I can do that pretty easy. So I'm going to grab my list and my edit text. Cool. So now I've got those two. I've captured a reference to them. And now from here we're going to do a couple of things. I'll go ahead and write out the to-dos of what we're hoping to do first. Made my text bigger there. I got a comment from someone in that the video text should be bigger, so I made it bigger. So what we want to do here is first we want to create an array list of strings, and then we're going to create an array adapter, and then we're going to bind the adapter to the list view. Cool, so let's go ahead and create our array list to start with. Again, I'll just go ahead and make it final. Some of these might turn out that they don't need to be final, but there's no harm in saying final. And what we're going to do is we're just going to create a new array list. That'll just make it blank. Then we'll just go ahead and hard code a few things just to kind of pre-populate it. I'll just call it array value 1, 2, and 3. Cool, so at that point we've got an array list. That should be review for people that have done a little bit of work with Java. Next thing we're going to do is create our array adapter. An array adapter will be should be new to you. An array adapter, just like an array list, uses generics. You have to say, like, what are the objects that are going to be inside this array adapter. They're going to be strings. Give it some name. I'll be very original and just call it ArrayAdapter. And then from here, you've actually got a lot of different constructors that you might try to use. You can see that there are, looks like 6 different constructors. You can see that all 6 receive a context, so that'll just be this. After that, you can see that a lot of them receive an int for the resource that they're going to use. And then after that, they receive, some of them receive a second int for the text view resource ID. That's if you have a view that has multiple text views in it. And then you can see that the last one is that you can specify the array as a list or just an array, so it can actually use either. We're going to be using this one with the list. So the context is going to be this. The resource that we're going to use, actually I didn't need that text view one. The resource we're going to use is one built in by Android, or one built in by Google. Whenever you want to use one of Google's built-in XMLs, you just say android.r. So this says use one of the built-in things. So r.layout. The one we're going to use is called simple Listview. Sorry, simple list item 1. And then the objects are going to be that list values array list. Kind of hard to get that all in one line, but hopefully you can see everything that's going on. So that's our new array adapter. And then to make something visible on the screen, we just have to say listview.setAdapter ArrayAdapter. So our goal was to try to quickly get something visible, and you can see we've done that here. We've captured the list view, we've created an array list, we've created an array adapter using a built-in XML, and then we've done the bind to make that connected to the list view. So at this point we should be able to run it. So if I right-click and I say Run as Android application, it should hopefully fire up and say array value 1, 2, 3. Cool. So that is the basics of getting started. We've actually covered quite a bit here, and we're going to go through some changes to make it a little bit different. Some of the simplest things you can do to change it to make it different is you can use a different XML. Try, for example, using simple list item, multiple choice, or single choice. You might be able to guess what those are going to do. So if I wanted to change it to the multiple choice, single, oops, what was it called again? Simple list item. Multiple choice. You might remember back from with menus when it was a multiple choice, it gave you little checkboxes. Much like the menu as well, it gives you the little checkboxes, but you'd have to take care of actually putting the check on there yourself. Seeing how that one works, you can probably guess what the single choice would be. It's going to be radio buttons. So there are a lot of built-in XML files that are set up to work, but the one that you'll definitely use the most is the simple list item 1. By the way, if you try simple list item 2, it will fail. That one actually has 2 text views in it, so stick with one or one of the ones we mentioned. Another thing you can choose to do is you can actually make your own XML file, which is a pretty common task. Let's go ahead and do that. So if you right-click on Layout and say New Android XML file, let's make a new XML. We'll just call it My Text View. I'm going pretty fast, but it's because it's a video, and you can always pause it if you need. So myTextView.xml. I'm going to make the root element a text view, because this XML, the only thing it's going to be just a text view, nothing else. The nice thing about creating your own XML is you can make all the choices for the properties very easily. So, for example, if we wanted to make the font size, whatever you'd like, I'll say 22 SP. The font color, whatever you like. I'll just do something that's mostly blue. I picked a 88F. Let's say you wanted it centered. I think these are some of the choices that the slides use as well. Center it up. Cool. And so then you can give that a whirl. That does not feel like 22 big. Oh, it's because I made that the actual text and not the text size. 22 SP. The text that's written in here shouldn't matter, so I'm just going to leave it as 22 SP, just because I think it's funny that I accidentally typed it. Once you've made a resource, then you can use your own, so you can get rid of the Android.R, and you can just say r.myTextView, and it should display using the XML that you provided. Cool, and you can see that it's blue, and it's the 22 SP, stands for Scalable Density Independent Pixels. And that's probably the most common way that people use array adapters, is they provide their own XML, which is just a single text view, and that's a very common way to use array adapters with a list view. But we, of course, are not going to stop there. So here are the slides for the things that I did there. We are going to make a compound view. So you can use compound views, so it can be multiple views, not just a text view. The only rule is that somewhere in there has to be a text view, so there must be at least one. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use the good old rowview.xml from the last application we did. If you didn't work that application, there's links on the next slide for getting those files. You're going to need a paper background.png file and then also an XML file from your Listview base adapter project. Just in case you can't easily copy them over, I'll just kind of pretend like I don't have them for the video here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this text, create a new file called rowview.xml. And then I'm going to just paste what I copied from the slides. So now I've got that one. You'll notice that it throws an error because it doesn't have this resource for paper background 44 tall. That's no problem. There's a link on the slides, so you can download it. Looks like I've downloaded it more than a couple times. And then once you've got it downloaded, just paste it into your drawable area. If you chose one of the higher level, you'll have like multiple drawables. Just go ahead and create a folder called drawable to serve as the default. Now the rowview.xml should look like this. You can see I put in January just kind of as a test, but we're going to override that, so it doesn't matter what it says. Now, in order to use that, what we need to do is we need to say not only the resource, which is rowview, but we also need to tell it what's the ID of the text view that's in there. So I'm going to give it, I believe it's called right text view. Yep, looks like it was. And so if I put it on the right and I run it, it should use my compound view and add the text to the right, which looks pretty good. You could, if you wanted, just for testing purposes, see what happens if you put it on the left. It's going to look bad, I'll say that. So if we put it on the left, it'll try to squish it in. Looks like it just says the word array and doesn't even say anything else. Oh, and this say January because that was the default, which came from our XML. You put it back to right. Cool. So that is also a pretty common task, to use a compound view and to have a single text view in there. And you can see in the slides what we did to make that happen. We're going to continue to add a few features. Edit text at the top that we are not currently using. What we'd like to do is we'd like to type in some text Then whenever the user hits enter or hits center on the D-pad, we'd like to add that to our array list and make it show up in the list view. So let's go ahead and make that happen. So some of this is kind of more about edit text than it is about like adapters and adapter views. And this is actually a review if you did lab, heck, it was lab 1, the form stuff tutorial. So, oops, did I not call it edit text? Oh, I called it edit view. Let me call it edit text. And so what we want to do here is we want to set an onKey listener. And we'll just use an anonymous enter class. We'll use the onKey listener. This one actually does really well with Eclipse and the autocomplete. It makes a really nice stub for you. I mentioned that because the adapter view one still kind of stinks. What we want to do in here, I'm just going to write out comments for what we're hoping to do. What we want to do is we want to see if the event is pressed down. I guess you get called for various events and you want to check to make sure it's pressed down. And then you want to see if the key code is enter or D-pad center. Not all devices even have the D-pad, but for the ones that do, it'd be nice if that caused it to get added. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab the string from the edit text, add it to the array adapter or the array list, and then notify the adapter. Cool, so let's see if we can make some of those things happen. So the first one we want to check on is we want to go into the event, and we want to get the action, and we want to see is it equal to action down, which is a define that is in the key event class. I mean, all this stuff you just kind of get from various tutorials about how to make it work, right? The next thing we want to do is we'd like to see if the key code is equal to the enter key, which is another define. It's called key code enter. The trouble, of course, is that each device is a little bit different. I'm told that some people's keyboards are kind of crazy, so you might want to check for even more things. But we'll assume that between enter or D-pad center, we'll catch most devices. So if those conditions are true, then we know that somebody either just hit the enter button or hit the D-pad center. And if that's the case, we're going to say, yes, we took care of the situation here. If it was something different, we'll go ahead and return false, which means somebody else might want to handle it. Nobody will, but we'll return false. So if we're handling the situation, what we'd like to do is we'd like to get a string. So I'll just call it edit text string. And you can just grab it from the edit text. You can say get text. The thing about get text is it actually returns an editable. I believe editable is actually an interface. I really don't care about all that. I just want the string, so I'm just going to call toString on it, and that'll guarantee I get a string out of it. Then what I want to do is I want to add it, so that edit text string, and then I would like to notify the adapter. So it's called ArrayAdapter, and you just say notify dataset changed. Cool. Those are the only important things that are necessary to add it to the view. A couple other things that you might choose to do is you might choose to set the text back to blank. Another thing you might choose to do is to hide the soft keyboard if it's up. The code for this I don't remember, so I'm just going to have to grab it from the slides. I just found this on an online tutorial. So if you wanted to close the soft keyboard if it's up, you could add this. Cool. So ideally it should add it to the list, and then we should see the update on the screen because we notified the adapter. So this would be a big change to the app. We can enter new values now. So if I was to enter, say, Dave, it would add Dave to the list. You can see it also closed the soft keyboard if it opens up on you. You can add as many as you'd like. I start just kind of adding gibberish. And you can see some nice things about list views is you get scrolling for free, so you can scroll through. And so it's adding these to that array list, and the array adapter is doing all the work to generate those views for you. Cool, so a neat little addition. The next thing we'd like to do is we'd like to learn about its listener. So the primary listener is the set on item click listener. So when we click on an item, we'd like for something to happen. What we're going to choose to do, just because it's easy, is just to delete the item that you click on. I'll go ahead and catch the slides up a little bit here. So next up, remove an item when clicked. This listener is going to be a little bit more trouble. Eclipse won't do quite as good a job at filling it out for us, but we'll make do. So I want to grab the list view, set on item click listener, and we'll just say new. And this is the one that will not work out as well. So we want to adapter view dot on item click listener, and you can see that this step before is where the other ones finish, but this one just begins. Add unimplemented methods, then it doesn't even give them good names. They should really be parent, view, position, and ID is what they really should be. Now what we'd like to do here is remove the item from the array list, and then just notify the adapter. Cool, so that's not too bad. So to remove the item, we just say list values, remove the current position, and then Mr. Adapter, I shall notify you that the data set has changed. Cool, so with those two short little lines, clicking on things should make them go away. So we can add new things. And then if I click, let's say I click on array value 2, click, you can see it goes away. Everybody else just kind of slides up. Array value 3, goodbye, goes away. Array value 1. So we can click and make things go away. That's not really overly useful, but I wanted to go ahead and get something in the on item click listener. Later what we're going to do is clicking is going to add a star to mark it as being important. But I thought we'd start with remove because it's easy. Cool. So making good progress. There's the code we added there. Got things working. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to, right now, each of these things is just a string. We're going to be making a new custom class to represent each row. Why is that? So our goal in this app is to click a row, add a star, and based on how many times you click it, it adds more stars. And the best way to use an adapter, array adapter, is to have a class that represents all of the data needed for a row. Since a string alone can't tell you a number of stars, we're going to have to create a class that will. We're going to call it just star text, pretty simple name. And it's going to be a very simple class that has a string as a private member variable and an int, which keeps track of the number of stars. Then we'll have an array list of those to populate for our new row views. So let's go ahead and create this new class, which is going to hold our data. So this is the model object. It's called star text. It's going to have two member variables. I'm just going to call it mText. Oops, that one's a string. And then mNumStars. And we'll give it a constructor. The constructor will receive a string, which we'll store into the text. And then each one of these will start with 0 stars. Each star text will start with 0 stars when you make a new one. So it's a string with benefits, right? There's a couple other methods that are going to be useful. This is the most important one. I can keep the slides up as I go, I guess. Some of the other ones that are important, we do want to be able to add stars, of course. So we'll just call it add star. And it just takes the num stars and adds one to it. We're also going to be using the ArrayAdapter. The ArrayAdapter really cares a lot about the toString method. It's what it puts into that text view. We'll go ahead and start off, and we'll just make it put into that toString just the mText. So for now, we're just throwing away the stars information. We'll get it back later. So we need those two. Those are pretty important. Then a couple of the other ones that we'll need as we keep moving. We're going to need one that returns a string. I'll just call it get star string. And really what we'd like to do is we'd just like to make a string. Let's call it star string. That represents the number of stars, right? So we'll just make a quickie little loop here. It goes up to num stars, and within the loop we'll just concatenate on another star. And then we'll just return the star string. Also, towards the very end of the app, we're going to need a getNumStars method. I'll just go ahead and add it now. It's nice, of course, to know what you're going to need down the road. Obviously, when I worked the app the first time, I added it later, but I'll add it now. Cool. So there's getStarString, getNumStars, a toString, which is the most important one, a constructor, and a way to add stars. So it's a pretty simple class. This is just going to be the model object for each row. So let's go ahead and see if we can use this class in our adapter, our array list. So our array list, instead of being strings, it's going to be star text. You're going to have to make changes to a lot of places. So the array list, its generic type is going to be star list, as well as the ArrayAdapter is also going to be star text instead of strings. And then to create a new star text, strings had this convenience thing going for them. But for star text, we're just going to have to say new star text, and you can pass in a string for the constructor. So you'll have to add that to all three of our hard-coded values. You'll also have to do the same thing, this new star text, down below when we added it. So we're going to say new star text. So now our array list is using this new object. Our ArrayAdapter is using this new object. So we've done a lot of refactoring. And just to make sure we didn't break anything in our refactoring, let's see if it still works the way it did before. So Dave, Bob, Frank, clicking on things should make them go away. Cool. So much like all refactoring, you don't really see much for your hard work, but it'll be there. It'll be useful. So let's go ahead and let's start making some changes. The first thing I want to do is I want to click to add a star, not remove the thing. So let's go down, and instead of removing it, what I'd really like to do is I would like to get the item at that location. and add star to it. Cool. If we run it now, we won't know about the stars in the background. One thing we can do, though, to see the stars is we can modify this toString. So in this toString, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just so I can see the stars, I'm just going to put the number of stars on before the text. And so that way we can see the stars as they get made. So this will be a big change. So when I click on things now, you can see that the stars get added. And that's because it's using the toString, and the toString says to do this, so that's what you get. If you make a new one, you should be able to click on those just the same. So, I mean, that's pretty good. Like, you can see the value of creating your own custom class, and the value of just overriding toString to do stuff. And that's all well and good, but it's not really what I wanted. I'll catch the slides up a little bit here. What I wanted is I wanted the stars to not be in line. I wanted the stars to be in the left text view, right? Well, this is actually a fair amount harder because a default array adapter only fills out one text view with the one toString. And what I want to do is I want to fill out multiple text views. So all of a sudden the default array adapter is going to no longer work. I'm going to need to override the array adapter. So I chose to make a new adapter called star text adapter whose superclass is ArrayAdapter. So let's go ahead and make a ArrayAdapter subclass. This is actually very common to make an ArrayAdapter subclass. The reason is that if you want to do anything more than ArrayAdapter, you got to subclass it yourself. The other thing that you can choose to do if you would like is star text adapter. It's only going to be used with star text, so if you'd like, you can remove the whole generics concept and just say, hey, this is going to be used with star text objects, which I think is actually quite reasonable to do. Then you can pick which constructor you're going to override. Right now my code is using this constructor. So I'm just going to override this one constructor because I know which constructor I'm calling, right? So I'll just override this constructor. And what I'm going to do later is I'm going to override getView. Before we do that, let's make sure that things are working. So this should work as an array adapter. Let's see if we can change away from array adapter, and instead of array adapter I want to use a star text adapter. You'll notice that you no longer are using generic, so you no longer have to say it's a star text. It knows it's a star text. And just by changing it from a generic array adapter to a star text adapter, we should be able to run the app and have it behave the same as it did before. So it's the exact same as it was before. It's using super for almost everything, right? So no surprise it works the same as it did before. But we want to put the stars over on this side. So the first thing we can do is we can put back the toString to just give us the text. And if you run it with that change, then all of a sudden you won't see your stars anymore. Which feels like a step backwards, but we'll get there. Catch up my slides a little here. So there's the constructor, changing it to use a star text adapter, and then we remove the put back the toString, and now there's no stars on click again. So we need a way to reference this text view. It's over here. We know it's there. So we're going to need to override getView of the star text adapter. We need to reference that text field. So what we're going to choose to do is we're going to grab our rowview.java file from the previous project, so the Listview base adapter. If somehow you don't have it, it's on the next slide. I'll pretend like I don't have it, and I'll just copy it from here. And I will create a new class called rowview. And I'm actually just going to paste in the new information, Control-Shift-O to import some stuff. What this class is it's a linear layout, so it's a compound view. It's a fairly simple compound view. It takes that resource, row view, and then it just captures the left and the right text views. And it's got a convenience method here to set the left text and to set the right text. So it's a pretty straightforward little compound view. But this will be handy because when we override getView, of the star text adapter, we're going to use it. An interesting thing happens here. In this particular example, we really don't need to call super at all. We don't need to call super's getView at all. There might be times where you would want to. If you wanted the super to do like the majority of the work, and then you would add a little bit to it, you could do that. That actually will happen in the lab. But here we want to just do something totally different, so don't even call super. And this part will feel a lot like what we did last time. With the first thing you want to check for is there a convert view I can use? If there's no convert view for me to use, then create a new one. You'll have to pass it in a context. If there is a convert view that you can use, then go ahead and convert it, i.e. cast it, because you know it's a row view because it came from a previous getView method. You can see here it says I don't know what mContext is. My thought was just during the constructor, just save off the context and just make yourself a little private member variable so that you can save that off in the constructor so you can use it later. A couple other ways you could get the context, but that's an easy one. Cool, so we've did the override of getView. We use this little convert view mechanism. That's all pretty boilerplate, to be perfectly honest. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to set the right text to the toString for this row. And then we want to set the left text to the get star string for this row. So to make the code a little bit easier to read, let's first go ahead and grab the star text, so the current row item. So you can just say get item for this position. So that'll be like the star text that represents this row, the star text being the text and the number of stars. And then what we want to do is for this row view, we want to set the right text to be current row item dot toString. And then the left is going to be the star string. So the current row get star string. Cool. So here we've got a way to populate two text fields, and the way we did it was by overriding getView. This should be a significant change to the app. So let's go ahead and run this. And if everything's in place, we should have pretty much what we're after. So if I click to add more things, I can do that. And if I click on a row, you can see it added a star. Click on it again, we get 2 stars, 3, 4. Click on other rows, you add stars. Cool. I think with the current view, I kind of max out with 8 stars, but that's fine. I'm not worried about that. And you can play with it to your heart's content, but this is pretty much what we're after. So here, I'll catch up the slides a little bit here. We got stars on the left with a click, just what we wanted. Why stop there? To be honest, this is like where the app kind of finishes. But we'll throw on some extra features and show you a little bit about grid views and galleries, and we'll play with a couple things. One thing I thought would be neat is if you star something, maybe it'd be nice if you put them in order of importance. So like if you rearrange the order. This is an optional thing, so if you want to, you can just copy it from the slides, but I'll just kind of do it. So the idea is when you give somebody a star, you might need to bump them up in the order. So the place where you could do this efficiently is within the on item click. You know that this guy just got a star, so he might need to move up. So what I chose to do, there's plenty of ways to do things, is first I check to make sure if it's not position 0. Because if it's position 0, there's no higher you're going to go. And then if the position -1 has fewer stars, so if it has fewer stars than the current position, kind of hard to see that all in one line, but so while those things are true, what I'd like to do is I'd like to swap those two positions. There's actually a method called swap that you can use. You just tell it the array list and the two positions you'd like to swap. I'd like to swap position with position -1. Might need to do a Control-Shift-O to get that in. And then once it's moved, I'll just decrement position and I'll do the check again. You could choose to use less than, which kind of moves it to the bottom, or you could choose to use less than or equal to, which would move it to the top of tying stars. Whichever you like is fine. So now if we added Dave and Bob and Rich, if we star Dave, he should pop to the top. So I star Dave, boom. And then if I star Bob, 1 star will actually move him all the way to the top. If we star him again here, he stays at the top. I'll give Rich 2 stars. And you can see that people rearrange themselves based on their number of stars. A little feature, but kind of cute. I'll catch the slides up a little here. The next thing that we'd like to play with is to play with different adapter views. And the main reason we're doing this is just to show you how similar they are. First off, the back ends are very similar. So let's say we wanted to make a grid view instead. So a grid view is very similar to a list view, except for you can have multiple views on each row. And that's really the big thing that are different. So it's just multiple views on the same row. But other than that, they work quite a bit the same. So let's go ahead and start by changing main.xml. What I'd like to do is I'd like to use a grid view. So I'll go ahead and grab a grid view, pop it on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out the list view. I'm just going to hold down Command / and comment that out. For my grid view, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the ID just grid_view. Very simple. The width, I'm going to say fill parents. Not sure if that's necessary, but I usually fill the parent on the width. The other thing I'd like to set is the number of columns. I know what the property is. I could just type it in XML, but I like to get in the habit of using the GUI to help me out. And so if I click on it in the outline, I can scroll to it, and here I can say num columns. I want 2 columns. So my grid view is going to have 2 columns. You won't see anything, but that's okay. And then if you look over in the XML, what you could have typed is just Android : num columns. Which, if you know the names, you could just use the XML more, but I kind of like the properties because I always forget the names. Cool, so that should be all set. Now what we're going to need to do is, when we capture the view, we're going to have to capture a grid view instead. So you can comment out the list view stuff and say, hey, I want a grid view instead of a list view. I'm also going to change the variable name and change the ID that I'm capturing. You'll also, since I changed the variable name, you'll have to change it in 2 other places. When you set the adapter, and then whenever you set the on-item click listener. So you have to change those as well. The other thing is, since you have half the width, array value is too long. I'm going to change it to just say item. So you've got a little less screen real estate to work with. And you can see with only those few changes, we get a very different visual appearance for how our app looks. And you can see that it's really just multiple views on the same row. And you can see that things work just like they did before. If I click on Rich, he'll immediately snap to the top. If I give Bob a star, he'll move as appropriate. So you can see that it keeps things in order, just like it did before, except for now it's using a grid view. There are all kinds of options you can do with like adding a little bit of spacing between them. There are quite a few features, but this will give you a good introduction to grid views. And hopefully the tutorial also, the Hello Grid Views, got you used to them. And the lab this week, we're going to be using grid views as well. While we're showing you different adapter views, let's go ahead and play with gallery. So drag over a gallery. And you can comment out the grid view. And the gallery, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make its ID just gallery. And I like to make the width fill the parent. No other properties need to be set. But we will need to capture a gallery instead. So it's no longer a grid view, it's now a gallery. And I'm going to be good and change the variable name. And you have to change the variable name when you set the adapter and when you set the on-item click listener. And the way galleries work is they're horizontal scrolling. So you can see there's item 1, and if I hold down my mouse, I can scroll over to item 2, item 3. If I add items, like I'll add a Dave, a Rich, a Bob, a Frank, you can see that there I've got Dave and Rich and Bob and Frank. If you click on people, so if I click on Frank, he'll go over to the head of the class. So he's now number 1. And you can see that the user interface is totally different. But really there's very little code that we did to change these things, which is kind of neat. So I mean, if you know how to use list views, you actually know how to use a lot of these different adapter views because they work so similar. And that's really just great design on Google's part, that if you know how to use one thing, you can easily start to use other things as well. Catch the slides up a little bit on that. So we changed it to a grid view first. That looked good, just had 2 columns. Then we changed it to a gallery. Galleries can be used for a lot of interesting things, but it's kind of a unique little widget that I really like that Google introduced. Seems like most people use it with pictures, but it doesn't have to be pictures. You can use it with a lot of things. Cool, so that's our app. That's the Listview Arrayadapter, and then we abandoned the Listview at the end here to show you a few other things. Moral of the story. An ArrayAdapter uses the toString to fill a single text view. If you want more flexibility, you're going to have to subclass ArrayAdapter. One of the practices that's typically good is to create a model class that holds all of the data that you need to represent each row, row/subview. And so what we did is we created the star text in this case. And then to really make the most of things, you're going to need to override getView, and you can do whatever you want. And you can make compound views, any crazy thing you'd like. And then at the end here, we proved that grid view and gallery really are very significant UI changes, but have very few changes under the hood. So if you know list view, then you know a lot of other adapter views too. And I think it's interesting now, kind of at the end of this demo app, to reread Google's description, and it really makes a lot more sense. I'll read it with you this time. So an ArrayAdapter is a list adapter. So list adapter is the interface that it implements that manages a list view backed by an arbitrary array of objects. The class expects a single text view in the resource ID. However, you can use a more complex layout, which we did. And you have to use the constructor that receives an ID, which we did. And that ID references a text field, so it's like left text or right text. And then however you get that text field, it will be filled with the toString, which is what we did to begin with. You can use a list or an array. We chose to use an array list, so a list of custom objects. Note it has to be an object. If you'd like, you can override toString of your objects, which is what we did initially to add the stars and the strings. That would be displayed. To do something other than text views, for example, image views, besides the toString, override getView. So I mean, we did all of this, right? So hopefully Google's description makes a lot of sense when you finish this app. Cool, so that is our summary of ArrayAdapters. I hope you enjoyed it. Best way to get the most out of this is to work the labs as well. The lab for this one I think is really a lot of fun. It's a campus golf app called, well, you can call it whatever you want. I think I called it Campus Golf. And what it does is it has two list views, a gallery, and a grid view. And it goes through making an app to keep score. Oh, that didn't work, I don't know why. To keep score of a golf round. Ooh, computer's bogging down. Cool, so if you want to really get the most out of this information, go ahead and work the lab. You'll be happy you did. Cool, see you next time.